I was standing in the parking lot of a Kroger on a Tuesday afternoon when my daughter-in-law's text came through. I remember it clearly because I was reaching for a cart, the kind with the wobbly front wheel that you never notice until you're already halfway down the cereal aisle, and my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I thought it might be my son. I thought maybe he was asking if I needed anything or just checking in the way he used to before she came along. It said, "Mom, honestly, with your pension, you should be scaling back. You don't need to be living so comfortably at this stage of your life. That money could be going toward people who actually have a future." I stood there in that parking lot for what felt like a long time. A woman with a stroller walked past me. A teenager in an orange vest collected carts nearby. The sun was doing that late October thing where it hangs low and gets in your eyes no matter which direction you turn. I read the message again. People who actually have a future. I was 64 years old. I had worked for 31 years as an office administrator for a county school district outside of Columbus, Ohio. I had raised my son Joel mostly on my own after his father left when Joel was 11. I had never once in my life asked anyone for a single dollar. I put my phone back in my pocket. I got a cart. I bought my groceries. I drove home. And that night, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea going cold beside me, I opened the spreadsheet I had been keeping for the past 3 years. I had started it almost as a joke, just to keep track of things, the way you do when numbers start to blur together and you tell yourself it's fine. It's family. It doesn't need to be so formal. It was not fine. I scrolled down slowly. The list went on for 4 pages. Joel had married Vanessa 6 years ago. She was 31 at the time. He was 34, and they had met at a conference in Nashville for pharmaceutical sales representatives. She wore structured blazers and had opinions about wine. He looked at her the way I had not seen him look at anything since he was a little boy discovering that he was good at baseball. I wanted to love her. I tried. I told myself that she was ambitious, which was true, and that ambitious people sometimes came across as cold when they were really just focused. I told myself she was good for Joel, because she pushed him. I told myself a lot of things in those first 2 years. The first time she asked me for money, I didn't even register it as asking. She mentioned over dinner that they were looking at a house in Worthington, and the down payment was going to stretch them a little thin. She said it the way people say the weather is going to be rough this weekend, casually, with the expectation that someone would offer an umbrella. I offered the umbrella. $40,000 from the savings account I had been building since Joel was in high school. I told myself it was an investment in their future. I told myself Joel would pay me back when things settled. I told myself this was what mothers did. Things did not settle. What I did not understand then, and what took me an embarrassingly long time to understand, was that there was no version of settled in Vanessa's mind. Settled was a place you visited briefly before moving on to the next thing that needed to be acquired or upgraded or expanded. Within 8 months of moving into the Worthington house, they had redone the kitchen. Vanessa sent me photos. White quartz countertops, a refrigerator with a screen on the door. I smiled at the photos and said it was beautiful, which it was. The contractor bill came to me indirectly. Joel called on a Sunday morning and said they were a little short that month. Things at work had been slow, and could I help cover just the balance on the kitchen renovation? Just the balance. $11,000. I helped cover the balance. I want to be clear about something, because I have thought about this a great deal over the past year and a half. I did not give that money because I was afraid of them. I did not give it because I was weak, or because I didn't see what was happening. I gave it because Joel was my son, because I remember driving him to baseball practice at 6 in the morning in a car with a broken heater, both of us bundled in our coats, him eating a granola bar and me drinking terrible gas station coffee, and the way he'd look over at me sometimes and just say, "Thanks, Mom," without any context, like he was thanking me for everything at once. That is the thing nobody tells you about being a parent. The love doesn't become a weapon on its own. Someone has to pick it up and use it. By the second year, the requests had stopped being requests. They became assumptions. An amount would appear in my account activity because Vanessa had my debit card number from a time I'd ordered something online for them and never gotten the card back. Or Joel would mention something in passing. "Oh, we put the car registration on your card. Hope that's okay." And I would say, of course, and go home and add it to the spreadsheet. Their mortgage. The car payments on both vehicles. The insurance premiums. The gym memberships. A grocery delivery service. Streaming subscriptions. 5 of them that I could identify. A wine club. 2 spa days for Vanessa that showed up on my visa statement the month after she told me they were cutting back. Joel's salary was $83,000 a year. Vanessa had gone back to work part-time after their daughter was born, bringing in another $22,000 or so. They were making over $100,000 a year between them, and I was, at that point, covering close to $3,800 a month of their expenses. I did the math one night, sitting in the same chair at the same kitchen table. $3,800 a month for 31 months. $117,800, plus the initial $40,000 for the down payment, plus the kitchen renovation, plus things I had probably forgotten to log. I sat with that number for a while. Outside my window, the neighborhood was quiet. My neighbor across the street had her porch light on. Someone was walking a dog. Everything was very ordinary, and I was sitting inside it, feeling like I had wandered into a room I didn't recognize. My pension, after 31 years with the district, was $2,800 a month. I also received a small Social Security benefit which brought my total monthly income to roughly $3,400. I was giving them more than I was keeping for myself. I had not fully understood this until I wrote it down. Numbers are strange that way. You can know something intellectually for a long time before your body catches up, before something in your chest shifts and you finally feel the weight of what you've been carrying. I closed my laptop that night. I made another cup of tea. I did not sleep well. The text from Vanessa, the one about scaling back, about people with futures, came 3 weeks after I had started to pull away. I hadn't said anything to either of them. I had simply begun declining things. I said no to covering the water bill 1 month. I said I couldn't help with the car payment because I had some unexpected medical expenses. I told Joel I was going to need to be more careful with my own budget going forward. He didn't push back. Joel never pushed back directly. What he did was go quiet in the way he had since he was a teenager. The way that meant he was going to manage his feelings privately, and I was supposed to feel guilty for causing them. Vanessa pushed back. She always pushed back, but she did it sideways, through comments made at the edge of conversations, through sighs timed precisely, through text messages that said things like, "I just thought family helped each other," as though I were the one who had stopped helping. And then the Kroger parking lot text, the one about my comfortable life. That was when something in me stopped bending. I want to tell you about a Tuesday morning in November, about 6 weeks after the parking lot. I had an appointment with a woman named June at the credit union where I had banked for 22 years. June had processed my direct deposits, helped me refinance my car once, remembered my name every single time I walked in. She had the kind of steady, quiet confidence that made you feel like things could be organized into manageable pieces if you just sat down and thought them through. I told June I needed to remove 2 authorized users from my accounts. I needed to close the card that Vanessa had the number for. I needed to redirect my automatic bill payments so they were going only to my own address. June did not ask questions. She pulled up my accounts, confirmed everything with me, and printed documents for me to sign. When we were done, she said, "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" I said no. I thanked her. I walked out into the November gray. I sat in my car for a few minutes. I was not crying. I was something else, something quieter, something I didn't have a word for. It felt like putting down a box you had been carrying for so long that you'd stopped noticing the weight, and then noticing it all at once, in the absence of it. I drove home. I made a list. The mortgage on the Worthington house, no longer my concern. The 2-car payments, no longer my concern. The grocery delivery, the wine club, the spa, the streaming services, the gym memberships, the insurance premiums, one by one, as the billing cycles came due, I let them go. I did not notify Joel or Vanessa in advance. When they called, I answered. When they asked, I explained simply and without anger that I had decided to manage my own finances more carefully. The calls escalated. Then they stopped. I heard things through the grapevine after that, the way you do in a family. My sister-in-law Linda, who had always been good to me and who I suspect had seen more of this situation than she ever said, mentioned in passing one afternoon that Joel and Vanessa had been going through a rough patch financially, that they'd had to sell one of the cars, that Vanessa had gone back to work full-time. I listened. I said I hoped they were doing okay. I meant it, actually, for Joel's sake at least, because whatever he had become inside that marriage was not entirely who I had raised him to be, and I held on to that distinction. I heard, a few months later, that there had been some tension between them, that the things holding them together had apparently been, in part, the frictionless life that someone else had been quietly funding. I did not feel good about that. I want to be honest. There was no satisfaction in it, not the way you might imagine. When something you loved begins to come apart, even something that had hurt you, you don't feel victorious. You feel tired and a little sad. And mostly you feel relieved that you are no longer standing in the middle of it. I should tell you about the phone call, because that is the part that surprised me. It was a Sunday in late March. I was in my backyard, pulling up the dead growth from last year's garden bed, getting ready to put in tomatoes and a row of basil the way I did every spring. My hands were dirty. I had a kneeling pad from the hardware store. The morning was cool and very still, the kind of morning that feels like it belongs only to you. My phone rang. Joel's name on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had let the last three go to voicemail. But some other thing that doesn't fully switch off even when it probably should, made me pull off my garden gloves and answer. He didn't have a prepared speech. That surprised me. Joel was the kind of person who prepared for difficult conversations, who had bullet points even when he wasn't reading from them. But this time his voice just sounded tired, the way people sound when they have run out of versions of the truth they can tell themselves. He said he had been thinking about things. He said he knew that he had let a lot of things slide that he should have handled himself. He said he wasn't sure when it had started, or how it had gotten to the point it had gotten to. And he said he was sorry, and the sorry sounded like it was coming from somewhere real, not from a script. I listened. I did not say it was fine, because it wasn't fine. I did not tell him we could go back to the way things were, because we couldn't. What I said was that I loved him, that I had always loved him, and that I needed him to understand that love was not the same as a bank account, that it could not be overdrawn and redeposited depending on the balance, that it had to mean something more than what it had meant for the past several years. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know, Mom, I know. I don't know what happens next between Joel and me. I don't know what his marriage looks like now or where they are in working through what they built and what it cost. I am not in the habit of predicting futures. What I know is this. My kitchen table is quieter these days. My bank account looks different. My monthly statements are mine, every line on them, every number, every choice. I planted my tomatoes in the third week of April, earlier than usual, and I sat out back on a warm evening in May, watching the garden and drinking a glass of sweet tea and not thinking about anyone else's bills. I have a granddaughter I haven't seen in 8 months. That is the part that cost me something real. Her name is Claire, and she has a gap between her front teeth, and she used to call me Grandma Bev. And I kept a drawing she made me on my refrigerator until recently, when I decided I needed to stop looking at it every morning because it was the kind of grief that doesn't serve you well if you let it sit in plain sight. I took the drawing down. I put it in a box. I kept the box. Some doors close slowly, and you feel every inch of them. But I have learned, at 64, which is later than I would have liked, that a closed door is not the same as a locked one. And that choosing yourself, after decades of choosing everyone else, is not selfishness. It is survival. It took someone telling me to live less comfortably to realize how comfortable I deserve to be. I hope you hear that, wherever you are. Especially if you are sitting at your own kitchen table tonight, looking at your own spreadsheet, already knowing what it says. You already know what you need to do. I love you, Joel. I love you, Claire. But I love Beverly too. And it took me 64 years to put her first. I have thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in any grand, philosophical way. Just the quiet, ordinary kind of thinking you do when you're pulling weeds out of a garden bed and your mind has nothing urgent to attach itself to. The truth is that what happened to Joel and Vanessa was not something that came out of nowhere. It never does. Every financial collapse I watched them go through in those months after I stopped the payments was a direct result of a structure they had built on something that was never theirs to rely on. They had made choices. Real choices. Conscious ones. And those choices had consequences. That's not punishment, that's just how things work. I think about Vanessa's text sometimes. People who actually have a future. I used to feel a sting when I recalled it. Now I mostly just feel sad for the version of her that thought that was true. That thought a woman in her 60s, with a paid-off car and a garden, and 31 years of honest work behind her, was somehow the lesser party in that arrangement. Contempt like that doesn't come from strength. It comes from fear, and from a kind of moral laziness that happens when people stop being held accountable for the gap between what they earn and what they spend. What I didn't do, and I want to be honest about this, was act out of anger. I acted out of clarity. There is a difference, and it matters. Anger would have had me sending a long text, demanding an apology, making sure they knew exactly how I felt. Clarity just had me sitting down with June at the credit union on a Tuesday morning and quietly removing my name from everything I had no business being attached to in the first place. That kind of restraint is not weakness. It is, I think, one of the harder things a person can learn to do. I raised Joel to be responsible. I raised him to understand that you do not live beyond your means, that you do not take what you cannot earn, that the people who love you are not a resource to be managed. Somewhere between that childhood and this marriage, he had unlearned it. I don't entirely blame him. It is easy to drift when someone strong-willed is steering. But it is not an excuse either. We are, all of us, responsible for noticing when we have drifted. That is what I had to learn too about myself, that noticing late is still noticing, that it is never too late to correct course. The granddaughter I haven't seen in 8 months is the part that still costs me something. Claire didn't choose any of this. She is 4 years old and has a gap in her teeth and drew me a picture of a house with a sun that had a face. I keep that picture in a box now instead of on the refrigerator, because grief should be honored, not displayed so prominently that it becomes the first thing you see every morning. But even that, the distance from Claire, is a consequence of choices her parents made. Not me. I did not take myself away from her. I stopped funding a life that was consuming me. Those are different things, and I have learned to hold that distinction clearly, because without it, guilt will move back in and set up a room and unpack its things. And I have had enough of guests who don't pay their share. What I know now at 64 is this: kindness without limits is not kindness. It is a slow surrender of yourself, dressed up to look like love. True love, the kind that actually helps someone, sometimes looks like a closed account, and a quiet Tuesday morning, and a woman driving home alone, finally at peace.